Mephiston, the Lord of Death, one of the most powerful characters that we have as a Blood Angels player. Today I'm going to talk about 5 different strategies that you can use to get the most out of him on the tabletop. Hello and welcome to the weekly tactics video. I'm John, the Blood Angels Commander, and thank you for hanging out with me for a bit today. We'll start with a little bit lower, then we'll look at his stats to get a full picture, and then we'll go over the 5 strategies that you can really use Mephiston to really benefit your army. If you get value out of this video, I'd appreciate it if you would like it, or if you would consider subscribing. Mephiston was originally known as Brother Calistarius. In this incarnation, he was a Blood Angels Librarian of some ability and exceptional strength of character. He was part of a relief force to the Hades Hive during the Armageddon campaign, in which he became a victim of the Red Thirst and fell to the Black Rage. Inducted into the Death Company, he took part in the assault of the Classorium building and was trapped inside when the building was destroyed during the battle. For 7 days and nights, Calistarius lay trapped in the rubble, teetering on the brink between death and madness, but through sheer strength of will he was able to hold in check the feelings of rage and the desire for blood, and thus emerged as something much more. On the 7th day, he emerged as Mephiston, Lord of Death. Mephiston is a beacon of hope in these dark times for the Blood Angels, as if one can conquer the Red Thirst, then maybe there is hope for others. Since that day, he's risen quickly through the ranks to Chief Librarian. He's a figure of awe, and his brothers perceive him as a saviour in these times of woe. Recently, after the devastation of Baal, he became the first Blood Angels to cross the Rubicon Primaris and become a Primaris Marine. Mephiston is arguably one of our strongest melee characters, but he does weigh in at a hefty 170 points. However, I think if you use the strategies I'm about to go over, you can really convey a lot of value. So let's dive into the stats. So we move 7, which is a little bit more than a normal Marine, weapon skill and ballistic skill of 2, toughness and strength of 5, both a little bit higher than your normal Marine, 6 attacks, 6 wounds, and then a 2+ armor save. When he crossed the Rubicon, he got 1 additional attack and 1 additional wound, and originally I wasn't so excited about that, but I think it actually does make him slightly more deadly. He also gets to choose 3 powers from the Sanguinary Discipline to add to Smite. He can deny the Witch with a +1 during a Psychic Hood. He can deny twice, and then although he doesn't actually have an invulnerable save, he does have a 5+ Feel No Pain, and there is a way to get him an invulnerable save, and we'll come on to that in a little bit. Armed with Vitaris, which is a 2x strength 4 sword, so that's a strength 10, so he's hitting on 2s, and then he's strength 10 with +1 from Red Rampage, so you're wounding anything toughness 9 or less in the game on 2s, so that's where a lot of his value comes from. And then he does have a plasma pistol, but it's just too risky to ever really fire it on high power, because if you roll the 1, he instantly slain. So you have 1 shot with a low power plasma pistol, and then you need to be in combat to use your sword. He does have some offensive psychic powers, but we're going to dive into some of those psychic powers and the 5 strategies. So strategy number 1, I'm calling Lone Warrior. So you make a 7-inch move. You cast Wings of Sanguinius to fly additional 12 inches. You then cast Quickening to add 3 to your charge roll, meaning that when you come to charge you're actually getting +4 to your roll, so even a Snake Eyes will give you 6. So you moved 7, you flew 12, you then charge your minimum 6. I mean, the chances of getting Snake Eyes or above Snake Eyes is fine, but 7, 12, 6. You essentially go 25 inches. And that's guaranteed, right? As long as you cast your 2 psychic powers, and you can command reroll one of them, and they do have kind of low warp values for getting them cast. Obviously, this isn't so scary if your enemy has a Psyker, because they can obviously deny the Witch, and most, at least Imperium Psykers, are wearing psychic hoods, so they get +1 to their roll. However, if you do put them in a transport, you can do something a little bit similar, and with the transport you can actually deploy him out the transport 3. So think about your 25-inch guaranteed charge, you now make it a 28-inch guaranteed charge. If you actually want to break down the maths, we're going to go into that in a second. So using this combo, he starts with 5 attacks. You get 6 from Shock and Awe. You then add D3 from Quickening, so let's take the average of that, so that would be you up to 8. You could pay 1 CP to get Red Rampage. Let's take the average of that D3 as well, so that gets you up to 10. And then if we are in turn 3 and we're in Assault Doctrine, you add 1 from Savage Echoes. So it's 11 attacks. So this can be very, very scary. 11 attacks, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, and then it's -3 in turn 1 and 2, and once we're in Assault, beyond turn 3, I'm always in Assault, beyond turn 3, you're in -4. There's a potential here also to use this as a reinforcement, so Strategic Reserve, pay 1 CP, he is power level 9, put him in reserve, bring him in on the side of the board, in 6 inches but still 9 inches away from the enemy, cast your 2 powers, Wings of Sanguinius and Quickening. The Wings, however, if you come into Strategic Reserves, will not let you make that move, however it will let you re-roll the charges because it's successfully been cast. So you now need a 5-inch charge coming in from reserve, right? And you get to re-roll it, assuming you manage to get both psychic powers off. 5-inch charge with re-rolls, the chances of making that charge are actually 92.3%. So it's like, I wouldn't say it's guaranteed, but that's a really high percentage play. I know that if you just drop like a squad down and they need an 8-inch charge with no re-rolls, that's a 41% charge. And I think recently what I've been finding in games is, personally, I don't like dropping a squad down knowing with a 41% charge they need to make the charge to win me the game, or they need to make the charge or they're going to get shot off the table. I don't like low percentage charges, so something like a 92% charge from the Strategic Reserves, I'm all for that. That sounds like a great odd to me. That gets him in 9 times out of 10. So I want to do some quick maths. So imagine that you'd managed to move him up in turn 1, like you just moved forward. In turn 2 you then move again, or maybe turn 1 you ran, in turn 2 you move again, and then you fly, and now you're at charge range. So if you're 8 inches from the enemy, so you need a 4 on 2 dice, and you got the reroll off from casting Wings, then your charge chance is 98%. So an 8-inch charge, 98%. That's very good. Then we go to the 9-inch charge that I just talked to you about, 92%. A 10-inch charge with the rerolls and the +4 is actually 82%, so still 8 out of 10 times you're making a 10-inch charge. And then if we look at the 11-inch charge, so the 11-inch charge with the reroll, the chances of making that are actually 66%. So 2 out of 3 times you make an 11-inch charge with Mephiston if you get psychic powers off and if you had him in the right position on the board to be able to do this. So if you look at like the 10-inch charge with the 82% possibility, and we add on the 12 from his fly, and then the 7 from the movement, and then if he was in an impulsor or a repulsor, we add on 3, you've literally got like 32-inch, 82% charge. So to make this a good play, I guess, when you take him out of the repulsor, you would need to put him somewhere he couldn't just be shot off the board, right? So you would move him 10 in case you don't get your psychic powers off. I'd probably cast Quickening first, then I'd go to cast Wings, and then you can decide if you want to jump forward. And yeah, I mean, it's just a crazy range, like 32 inches, and then like I said, for 1 CP you can basically almost guarantee that he has 10 attacks, and if it's turn 3 or above, like I think the maximum you can get here is 13 attacks. So you could get 3 from Red Rampage, you could get 3 from Quickening, you get 2 more from 1 from Shock Assault, 1 from Savage Echoes. That gives you 8, and then his initial 5, so you get 13 attacks. So yeah, 13 attacks, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, -3 or -4. So if you are playing him as a lone wolf and you do this, and for some reason you don't kill what you need to kill, pay 3 CP and have him attack again, you get the same 13 attacks. It's also worth noting that the D3 attacks added during Quickening last until your next psychic phase, so you keep those attacks in the opponent's turn, and due to the new rules, if you're not charged, he gets to fight first again. And then finally, only in death does duty end. Pay 2 CP to attack one last time if your opponent does actually kill you. Alright, strategy number 2, and we're going to call Gotcha. When we're playing 40k, normally we have a good idea of other people's lists, but sometimes we'll take something that somebody doesn't know about, and the idea is that you can use that against them, and then when you use it and it messes their game up, you can go Gotcha. So this is what this strategy is all about. So before 9th edition came out, I probably wouldn't have recommended to use Mephiston as your warlord. I didn't really rate Speed of the Primarch that much. However, now I feel like I really rate it really highly. So we want to talk about Unbridled Ardor. So this gives Mephiston, or any Blood Angel, but we're talking about Mephiston here, the ability to do a 6-inch heroic intervention. So when he does the heroic intervention, he gets his 1 attack from his shock assault, and he still gets his 1 attack from Savage Echoes, so he's going in there with 6 or 7. If you did cast Quickening in your turn, then that carries, so let's just add the average again of 2, so you're going in with 8 or 9 attacks. This is a real gotcha moment, because any of your allies within 6 inches, they have to be fully within 6, not like be in range within 6. It's a heroic intervention, so it's measured slightly different, but if they're within 6 and you've placed them well, like behind a squad, and you can get round in front, then basically heroically intervene 6, and guess what? You're fighting first with your 7, 8, 9 attacks. So yeah, if you do this when they charge in like a big character or a dreadnought or something, then this is definitely gotcha, as you demolish the squad, hopefully before they even get to attack you. So fighting first when you're charged, fighting first in the opponent's turn, fighting first if you heroically intervene within 6. I mean, it's a really powerful stratagem. It's all about having Mephiston positioned tactically, expecting the charge and using him to really countercharge, and then gotcha. So strategy 3 is Look Out Sir. Basically, in 9th edition, run Mephiston with a group of guys, more than 3 models, or a vehicle, more than 10 wounds. If you do that, unless he's the closest target, he can never be targeted for shooting. So, with this strategy, what I really like to do is take something like the Shield of Sanguinius psychic power and give said squad or said vehicle an invulnerable save. I know it's only a 5 up, but if you cast it on something like a Redemptor Dreadnought that can move quite far, maybe a Death Company Dreadnought that can also move quite far, and have him basically sit right behind it and follow it down the battlefield. I guess maybe if your psychic power fails, you could command reroll it, or you could hide them. Like Mephiston could fly away in the psychic phase if your movement ends up not being what you want it to be. So yeah, there's 2 ways to really do this. One is moving forward across the battlefield with him, like I did it with a Redemptor Dreadnought, where I just put Shield of Sanguinius on the Redemptor Dreadnought, and like my enemy unloaded quite a lot of Meltas into it, and I don't know, it just lost 5 wounds or something like that. So Mephiston's totally safe and we're just moving down the battlefield. The other option is bring in the strategic reserves. You could bring in Death Company Intercessors, Sanguinary Guard, Primaris Reavers, and give them the invulnerable save and basically have them cover him as you move through on the battlefield. I mean, the other option here as well is he can put the Shield of Sanguinius on himself, which gives him the 5+ invulnerable save, but I think putting it on another model that's right next to him, and I mean, personally, I don't like the Lone Wolf strategy all that much. I prefer to keep my models together and then break off once turn 3 happens, sort of, and start mopping up the board with close combat then. Typically what will happen on the Lone Wolf strategy is you will jump in, you maybe kill a high value target, but you will die. This happens very often as well with Smash Captains, so you have to decide if that's a sacrifice you're willing to make. With the Smash Captain, when he was 129 points, yeah, it was a no-brainer maybe in the 8th edition, but now with him being a little bit more pointy, and obviously Mephiston being even more pointy, it's maybe something to just think about before you decide to go Lone Wolf. Strategy 4, we're going to call Unleash the Forlorn Fury. So the Death Company, they can move forward with Forlorn Fury before the game begins, 12 inches plus a d6 because they advance. It's d6 plus 1 from Red Thirst, so they move forward 19. Mephiston jumps forward 7, then he flies 19. Then your Death Company have moved forward 12, so now they've done a 31-inch move in turn 1. You then can cast Unleash Rage on them. They're not going to be very far away from the opponent at that point. I really think they're going to guarantee their deep strike, and then you'll be able to basically deep strike in with +1 attack on however big that Death Company would be. I guess I like to run a lot of chain swords, so you can really be talking like 50-60 attacks in turn 1 very easily. I mean, this could also be used with the reserves rule as well. If he comes on from the side of the board 6 inches, he must be 9 inches away from the enemy. If you want your deep strikers to come in somewhere else, like a Sanguinary Guard or Death Company, drop them in. As long as they're within 12 of Mephiston, you can again give them the Unleash Rage, and you can just, those extra attacks, you know, if you've got a big squad of guys, really can make quite a bit of difference. Strategy number 5 is the counter charge. So I think possibly the most effective way to play him is sitting somewhere in the middle of your bubble. The bubble I like to run as a Blood Angels player is like some aggressors, some assault intercessors, the standard of sacrifice, maybe another character buffing their hits here. So you've got that bubble sort of moving around, like trying to contest the middle of the map. I like to have Mephiston 6 inches behind that bubble or within that bubble. Maybe he can heroically intervene against some enemies, but super ready to countercharge any big threats. And yeah, I just think that that is one of the strongest places on the battlefield for him. So now there's 2 psychic powers that I haven't talked about. The Blood Boil that can do a maximum of like D3 mortal wounds, and the Blood Lance that's a bit more random because you need a 5+. I'm just going to say that I don't usually pick them. I always see more value in quickening, and wings is super important, and then really at that point it's between Unleash Rage and the shield. I personally like to take the shield quite often. I feel like it can really help keep some armor alive, depending on what you're running, of course. But that's totally up to you. If you've got a melee focus list, then I'd probably say take Unleash Rage. If you've got some armor or something like that, then maybe you can think about taking the Shield of Sanguinius. So I've been running Mephiston in my 9th edition army list. I think he's a really valuable character. His buffs can add a lot to other characters. He's also quite scary, and if you keep him positioned well, then he's always going to be a threat into the end game. And once you get to like turn 3 or 4, he just becomes an absolute monster. He'll kill like an entire squad or an entire vehicle in one turn, and chances are they may not even get saves, or they may be just saving on 6s. I also kind of prefer him to Librarian Dread, because if you do get him in cover, and cover is a lot different now in 9th edition, you can essentially get a 1-up save. So essentially you would ignore AP -1 and AP -2, you're still saving on like 3s, AP -3 is still 4s, so the invulnerable save isn't the most problematic, and obviously his 5 or 6 Feel No Pain is fairly decent, and you can CP armor saves as well, right? So if you get hit by something really nasty like a Meltagun, it might be worth paying the 1 CP to reroll that armor save. So I hope you find these strategies useful. Leave me a comment below if you did, or if you didn't and I missed one of your strategies that you think is super valuable with Mephiston, please try and let me know about it. I try and respond to every comment on this channel. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the little bell so you get a notification every time I go live. I'm working on a ton of different stuff for the channel. Thanks again, and I'll catch you in the next one. By the blood are we made. Peace.